At that time, Hanani the seer came to King Asa and told him, "Because you have put your trust in the king of Aram instead of in the Lord your God, you missed your chance to destroy the army of the king of Aram. Don't you remember what happened to the Ethiopians and Libyans and their vast army with all of their chariots and charioteers? At that time you relied on the Lord, and he handed them over to you. The eyes of the Lord search the whole earth in order to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. What a fool you have been. From now on you will be at war." Hanani basically says, you were supposed to trust in the Lord. Why did you turn to the king of Aram instead? Now, because you're not trusting in the Lord, you're going to continue to be at war for the rest of your life. So it's not even that King Asa had turned away from worshiping the Lord. He just let his fear get the best of him in a crucial situation and tried to use his own means to get some support from another king instead of once again solely relying on the Lord. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. All right, so now we're looking at 2 Chronicles 16. Past couple of chapters have focused on King Asa of Judah. He led, the past chapter described it as religious reforms, but essentially he led an effort to remove all the idols from the kingdom of Judah and seemed to successfully do so. The people, after hearing that, God would be with them as long as they worshipped God and, followed him, sought him. So God will be with them as long as they followed him. After hearing that, the people kind of made their own covenant, or maybe sort of renewed the prior covenant. Either way, there was a covenant ceremony, and they dedicated themselves to following the Lord their God once again. And as a result of that, there was peace in the kingdom of Judah for about 20 years. And now that brings us to chapter 16 here. So here we go. In the 36th year of Asa's reign, King Baasha of Israel invaded Judah and fortified Ramah in order to prevent anyone from entering or leaving King Asa's territory in Judah. Asa responded by removing the silver and gold from the treasuries of the temple of the Lord and the royal palace. He sent it to King Ben-Hadad of Aram, who was ruling in Damascus, along with this message: "Let there be a treaty between you and me, like the one between your father and my father. See, I am sending you silver and gold. Break your treaty with King Baasha of Israel, so that he will leave me alone." So war came to Judah, not because they did anything wrong in particular, so it seems, but because their neighbors, even brothers you might say, in Israel decided to attack. Given that the kingdom of Israel was composed of far more tribes, they generally had the larger fighting force. In fact, there was a battle just, I want to say, about 3 chapters ago, where Asa's father was up against Jeroboam and the army of Israel, and that essentially Israel had double the number of troops that Judah had. Judah still won that battle because they were dedicated to the Lord and cried out to him for help, and God helped because of that. But still, Israel would likely have a much larger army than Judah. So, when Israel attacks and, starts invading, fortifies a particular... I don't know if that's a fortress of some kind, but they fortified Ramah. It seems like Israel might have the upper hand here. So then King Asa tries to make a deal with the king of Aram, who apparently had a treaty of some sort going on with Israel. And Asa's basically saying, okay, look, I'm going to give you a bunch of stuff if you break your treaty with Israel. I just want him to leave me alone. Please, can you come help get him away? Note there at treaty in verse 3. That comes from the Greek version. Hebrew reads, there is a treaty. So, that would almost be more like sort of appealing to the fact that they have a treaty already and say, look, we got this partnership going on. And I'm asking for your help as a partner in this, as opposed to, hey, let's become partners. So then, Israel will get off my back. Either way, it's to get Israel off of his back. So then, verse 4. Ben-Hadad agreed to King Asa's request and sent the commanders of his army to attack the towns of Israel. They conquered the towns of Ijon, Dan, Abel Beth-Maachah, and the store cities in Naphtali. As soon as Baasha of Israel heard what was happening, he abandoned his project of fortifying Ramah and stopped all work on it. Then King Asa called out all the men of Judah to... Yeah, okay. I wanted to make sure I was reading that right. Then King Asa called out all the men of Judah to carry away the building stones and timbers that Baasha had been using to fortify Ramah. Asa used these materials to fortify the towns of Geba and Mizpah. Okay. So, the request has been granted by the king of Aram. So he goes and attacks Israel, obviously weakening them. It says they conquered a few of the towns from Israel. So that obviously diverts King Baasha's attention away from Judah and towards, the Aramean army. I get the feeling that, the Arameans were more actively attacking Israel, whereas Judah had just kind of been on the defensive from Israel's attack. And so King Asa used this opportunity to take the materials that were being used to fortify Ramah, which must have been like some key checkpoint along the typical trade route or whatever for Judah. But King Asa gets his men to take the materials from that and use it to fortify a couple of his own towns. Note there, probably referring to Abel Beth-Maachah. That's as in a parallel text from 1 Kings 15:20. Hebrew reads Abel Maim, which is another name for it. It's still referring to the same town either way in all likelihood. With 2 Chronicles being part of a recap of Israel's history, this stuff had already been mentioned back in 1 Kings, apparently. And the way that I understand this note is that 1 Kings 15 already had it called Abel Beth Maachah, but the Hebrew for 2 Chronicles 16, the Hebrew manuscript anyway, had it as Abel Maim, but that could also have just been another way of referring to the same place. Maybe it's one of those things where it got to have sort of a different name over the course of time, but because it's referring to the same place, the translators here decide to keep it consistent with what was said in 1 Kings and just add this note here. After Israel's attention has been diverted, we get to verse 7. At that time, Hanani the seer came to King Asa and told him, "Because you have put your trust in the king of Aram instead of in the Lord your God, you missed your chance to destroy the army of the king of Aram. Don't you remember what happened to the Ethiopians and Libyans and their vast army with all of their chariots and charioteers? At that time you relied on the Lord, and he handed them over to you. The eyes of the Lord search the whole earth in order to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him. What a fool you have been! From now on you will be at war." Asa became so angry with Hanani for saying this that he threw him into prison and put him in stocks. At that time, Asa also began to oppress some of his people. See, so... It calls Hanani a seer, which I don't know if there's necessarily a significant difference between that and a prophet. But Hanani basically says, you were supposed to trust in the Lord. Why did you turn to the king of Aram instead? Now, because you're not trusting in the Lord, you're going to continue to be at war for the rest of your life. So it's not even that King Asa had turned away from worshiping the Lord. He just let his fear get the best of him in a crucial situation and, tried to use his own means to get some support from another king instead of once again solely relying on the Lord. Fear is a very common thing that will turn some people away from seeking God in a situation. In fact, I think most of us are guilty of trying to take matters into our own hands like this because we're afraid. But King Asa obviously doesn't like hearing that from Hanani, so he throws the guy in prison. And it also says he began to oppress some of his people. I assume that's sort of an indication that he is kind of going to continue on this path of turning away from the Lord. Because what need would he have to oppress the people if they were all mutually following the Lord and, agreeing that things should be done the same way? Or even maybe just agreeing on the same reasons or motivations for what they do. Okay. Note there at Ethiopians, the Hebrew says Cushites, which again is probably what they were called at that time. Instead of charioteers, it could be read as horsemen, but aren't... if you've got chariots... I guess charioteers are necessarily tied to the chariots. Horsemen, there might have been other horses that weren't tied to chariots that would have had riders. Either way, that was just part of Hanani being like, okay, you remember when this other army attacked this massive 1,000,000+ man army that came to attack you when you had maybe half of that size of army? You completely relied on the Lord then, why are you not trusting the Lord now? It's a similar situation, even. I think that's pretty much what Han and I was getting at. Anyway. Okay. Verse 11. The rest of the events of King Asa's reign, from beginning to end, are recorded in the Book of the Kings of Judah and Israel. In the 39th year of his reign, Asa developed a serious foot disease. Yet even with the severity of his disease, he did not seek the Lord's help, but turned only to his physicians. So he died in the 41st year of his reign. He was buried in the tomb he had carved out for himself in the city of David. He was laid on a bed perfumed with sweet spices and fragrant ointments, and the people built a huge funeral fire in his honor. Theory confirmed, I guess, that King Asa continues to turn further away from the Lord, because he doesn't even seek God's help with a disease. So King Asa here develops a serious foot disease, it says, in the 39th year of his reign, but he continues to not seek the Lord and turns to his physicians instead. So, about 2 years later, he dies. And the fact that it says, so he died, kind of implies that it was maybe because of the foot disease, or because he just turned to his physicians instead of the Lord. But yeah, so his reign as king of Judah is done. Maybe next chapter we'll start getting a better indication of whether 2 Chronicles continues to only follow the kings of Judah, and we'll see who's next when we get to the next chapter. But that does it for 2 Chronicles 16. Okay, so as we have read multiple times about God's people at this point, even King Asa, who was responsible for pretty much removing all of the idols and stuff throughout Judah, even he kind of turned away from God. Not like he stopped worshiping God per se, but his trust in God dwindled. And essentially because of that, he ends up dying from a disease that otherwise might not have killed him, as well as other things. But yeah, like, it's interesting to me how even seemingly the best of the best people, or at least they seem like that one moment, end up faltering and even like overall kind of failing in their continued relationship with the Lord over the course of time. I guess, it can be kind of comforting in a way, realizing that, it's only natural, and we're not just, so broken or lost or whatever that God couldn't love us whenever we slip up. But anyway, just a little extra nugget takeaway thing that I thought about reflecting on all this. But that's going to do it for now. As always, like and share if you enjoyed the video and want others to see it. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. Make sure you look down in the description for links to social media pages, my Discord server, my supporter page, all that kind of stuff. Any way that you might want to or be able to follow my content and interact and all that good stuff. And if you'd like to interact right here, just look down below the video and all that. Leave your thoughts and questions down in the comment section. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, until next time, stay cool, people.